Welcome back to another episode of Lead Stronger Longer, the podcast that inspires you to lead yourself, lead your life, lead your business purposefully. Today, we have a guest who embodies the spirit of innovation and leadership. I'd like to give a warm welcome to Matt Mueller. He is a keynote speaker. He is a best-selling author of The Mindful Innovator. He is a global innovation strategist, and he is a RETHINK Retail Top Expert. Matt has built a stellar reputation for transforming teams and driving success. He collaborates with the world's top brands to cultivate highly engaged, productive, and loyal workforces. His strategic insights and innovative approaches are celebrated for delivering tangible results and fostering long-term team success. With a passion for empowering others, Matt's work not only inspires, but also brings a joyful and dynamic energy to leadership and innovation. So get ready for an engaging and enlightening conversation that will leave you motivated and equipped to lead stronger longer. Thank you so much for joining me, Matt. I'm really happy to have you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be on your show. It's so excited to dig into this, and it's an important topic. So I'm so glad to be here.
Indeed. Okay. So, I always like to start with your favorite quote or mantra.
So many of them. My favorite quote would have to be a quote by Henry Ford. And that is, if I were to ask people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And that was, in the invention of the car when he was trying to create it, he knew not to just ask directly, "Hey, what do you want?" Because if you did, you wouldn't get the right answer. So it's a matter of finding those innovations by the observations that you're making. So one of my favorite quotes that leads my innovation.
I love that. Okay. So, how would you actually apply that in your world? And can you give us an example of how
Yeah.
you apply that? Because that's innovation.
Yeah. I apply it in my world every single day with my clients and my own, business. And it's a matter of not going straight at the problem, to the source and saying, "Hey, tell me what's wrong with this." Like, so in the work that I do in innovation, there's a lot of research that goes along with that. And I don't mean like, big quantitative research. Let's do these big studies and polls, but I'm just talking about like qualitative research, like really high quality research where you dig deep. And when you shop stores with customers, you work behind the counter with employees, that's when you learn the biggest insights. And it's never going at it directly for what you're trying to accomplish. So, thinking about a project that I worked on in the bakery industry, and I shopped stores with them. One of the biggest issues they had in the bakery was that sales were going down. They were seeing less customers come into the bakery department. And the feeling within the organization with leadership was like, well, yeah, this is like 2020, 2021. People are eating a little bit healthier now. They don't want to have all these sugary snacks. We probably got to add more gluten-free options in, more lighter options, healthy snacks like vegan brownies, things like that. So that's what their hypothesis was. And when you go in and you talk to the customer in that bakery department, walk side by side with them with their shopping cart, you ask them, what do you expect in a bakery experience? And what leaders did before I got there in that bakery, they were asking their consumers, do you want healthier options? And what do the consumers say? Yeah, of course I want healthier options. I'm trying to watch my weight. I'm definitely trying to eat better. But then when you shop with them, like we'll be in the bakery department, and you'll see like they kind of pass by it, not purchasing anything. But then they go to the cookie aisle and they're putting Oreos in their cart. They're putting Cheez-It crackers in their cart. So you're telling me if they want to eat healthy. So the observations weren't computing with what they were saying. So you have to think about like, how can you ask the questions in different ways? So what are your expectations in the bakery? Why don't you shop in this bakery? And let them just tell you rather than kind of assuming what they're going to say to you. Just be completely open and just listen to them. And in that conversation with those consumers there, it wasn't a matter of they wanted to eat healthy. It was that the bakery was just very sterile. I didn't smell anything good. And you know what? I'm going to go to the Oreos because I know what that product is like, and the cookies in the bakery. I think they're baked off premise anyway. I don't think they make them here. Meanwhile, they do make them there. They just make them at 5 o'clock in the morning when no one's in the store. So they weren't getting credit for this fresh baked goods in the store. Rather, they were just going to the Oreos. So instead of thinking about putting healthier options in that bakery, the insights that we got from the consumers there was that no, we just need to make the department feel more fresh, more inviting. Maybe cook some cookies in the middle of the day so you could smell those chocolate chip cookies and the brown sugar in the air. And that's what brought sales back to that bakery department.
I love that story. That's completely tangible and it's so real. You could apply that anywhere. And it does take having that shift in perspective and
Mhm.
and stop the assumptions, right? So what led you to this specialization to really dive deep in this and go all in as the expert in this area?
So I was in the retail business for a long time. As a kid, I grew up in the delis. I managed delis, and then I was fortunate enough to work for a CPG, a consumer packaged goods company, working in that for that retail experience. And the CPG company said, "Hey, Matt, we want to start an innovation team, ground up, white piece of paper. What does this look like? How do we build a team?" I had no experience in innovation, but I was like, "Yeah, let's do this. This sounds really exciting. I mean, it sounds so cool to be able to run an innovation team and start that up." So we thought about all the different processes that we would use, design thinking and stage gate. We thought about all those different mantras of innovate or die, disrupt or be disrupted, fail fast. And we started to just consume all this content on innovation. There's so many books, about 2,000 books come out a year on the topic of innovation management. So a ton of content. And we're just trying to take as much of it in as we can. And for the first 2 years on this team, we wound up putting out some really interesting innovations. Like it was creating like the Disney of our industry. It was about robots, lasers, AI, all this like cool tech. But for 2 years, everything we did not hit the mark. Nothing actually evolved the industry or broke through. And this one day, I was testing out this concept in New York City, right in the middle of Manhattan, in a store, and we spent thousands of dollars on this concept. We put a lot of like months of labor into it, and we tested it out, and this thing completely failed. And for 2 years now, we've been failing test after test. And I had to go back to my hotel that night and retreat. And I was just really upset. Like, I didn't know how much longer I was going to have a job for. Our team was not making any type of gains in the market. So I started walking back to my hotel, and with my phone in my hand, I would just start texting everybody on the team, "Hey guys, we got to do something about this. Things aren't working out too well." And as I was doing that, there was an orange blur that was growing in the distance. And it kept on getting closer and closer to me until eventually I had to look up. And standing there right in front of me in the middle of Manhattan was a monk dressed in orange, like in his robe that you see him wear in Tibet, and warmest eyes you ever saw, a smile that was infectious. And he just puts his palm out right in front of me. And the palm in his hand was a wooden mala bracelet. And he handed it to me and gave it to me. And I was like, wow, like this is amazing. I don't know, what to do with this in this moment, but I knew something profound was happening. I mean, 15 people were walking down the block shoulder to shoulder with me down the street of Manhattan, but yet he stopped me and gave me the bracelet. So I went back to my hotel that night and I started to do some research on the bracelet. And I was like, well, this is really interesting. There's like these symbols on it. And the symbol that's really calling out is this symbol in Sanskrit that says Ripka. And when you translate that word Ripka into English, it means unconfused knowledge. And that's when it all hit me. I was like, we have been messing up innovation. This is not what innovation is about. It's not about the process. It's not about the mantras. It's not about the books. That was just confusing what innovation really was. So what if I were to look at innovation before a book or a process? What if I were to take on the beliefs of a monk and just were to reflect and meditate on those concepts? And my team and I went through a lot of research after that moment to figure out that there are three common variables to all innovation. Everyone from the wheelbarrow back in 400 BC to the potter's wheel in 4000 BC to the iPhone, in 2007, they all have the same three key variables to their innovations. And that is how I built my process around everything. And that's when we started to see success in our innovation team. And it's still today what I use is those three key variables what I use with my clients today.
You don't have to stop. I'm so interested.
Okay.
And I don't think I'm even going to ask you the question, because that pretty much sounds almost like the crucial early mistake. That's usually my question 3. So are you willing to share those 3?
Of course.
Okay, let's go. I
Of
want to hear them.
course. I didn't want to bore you if you don't want to.
No, I'm so excited. I mean, unconfused knowledge. I
Mhm.
mean, is that not more relevant in today than ever?
Yeah.
It's like, absolutely. We've got so much knowledge, so much information, and
Yeah.
so much
Overload.
confusion.
Yeah. So
And
much.
it's why I'm just thrilled. I love mindful innovation. I love that you are a spearhead for this. You wrote the book on it. You are the master at this. If people need to hear more of this and understand this and the power of simplicity behind it, because things have
Yeah.
been so overcomplicated. Okay, so no, I'm not. I know my eyes were like I was. No, I'm so interested, and I would love for you to tell my audience, and let's share
Course.
what is
let's
this?
let's dig into them for sure. But yeah, you're so right. It's like there's so much chaos in the world and uncertainty that we need to get laser focused. And I think when we simplify and put a framework around our innovation, around our evolution as a company or as a person, it helps us to really say, okay, nothing else matters. It's just about these 3 variables, and where does everything kind of fit in, and how do we move these forward. Now, those 3 variables I learned was, the first one is there has to be a real problem. And what I noticed was that a lot of times we were not solving real problems. Like, my innovation team was not solving real problems. We were just trying to create something that was really cool. Okay, let's put some robots in the store. That'd be awesome. But why? What real problem is it solving? So one of the issues I was trying to solve on my team was that we had all these signs in these stores, and we'd spend millions of dollars every single year on these signs, but consumers were not looking at them. When we shop stores with consumers, say, hey, did you see that focus item on sale? Or did you see this new campaign we have over here? And they're like, oh, no, I didn't see that, because there's just so much around. So I went to this expo one day where they were like showing these merchandising displays. And I was wanting to see all the newest, latest, and greatest innovations that were in the merchandising space. And I found this one really amazing sign. And it was a sign that was a box, and in the box was like a holographic image, and as you moved, it moved with you. It was like one of those old baseball cards, right? So that was really cool, but it was translucent, so there's a video screen behind that actually showcased just another layer of dynamics in the sign. And it was like, this thing demanded your attention. It's like, holy cow, this thing's amazing. It will solve my problem of people not looking at my signs. So that was the one that we put into stores in New York City, where nobody cared, nobody looked at it. And what I realized is that we were solving the wrong problem. I was trying to solve my very specific problem of no one's looking at my signs, but that wasn't a real problem. So what real problem can I solve with a sign is the question I should have been asking, right? Because when we pivot that question, like, how do I get consumers to look at my signs? Well, we'll make it useful to them. So we looked for problems within our industry that we could solve with a sign. And we found out that one of the biggest issues that consumers had in the experience was having to pick out their items in a certain thickness, right? In certain slices. So do I want my turkey thin? Do I want it thick? Do I want it shaved? I don't know. And when I say thin, is that going to be the same thing to the employee that's cutting it? I don't know. And it was a lot of frustration in that moment for consumers. So we wound up developing a sign that showed those different thicknesses and putting that in the stores on signs. And not only were consumers starting to look at our signs, they were actually using our signs. So you have to think about, what is the real problem that you're trying to solve? That is first and foremost, that is the foundation of the 3 keys, is to do that piece of it. So the second is that you have to create a change that's going to improve that problem. And you could say, yeah, Matt, no, duh. Of course, we have to create change to have innovation. Of course, that's what innovation is. Yeah, totally. But we have to think about that change that's going to improve and really embrace the change that's going to improve. Is it really the change? Is it really change? Or are we just, making some minor nuances that in the language that makes you think it's change? See, a lot of times, like in organizations, especially like, corporate companies that have been around for a long time, it's hard to embrace change, right? It's you have like, oh, we've done that before, we tried it, it didn't work, or you know what, we have always done it this way for the last 100 years, we're good, thank you. And they don't want to change. So how do you foster a culture that allows that change? So you have to think mindfully about, how can I create that change within my organization, and be very purposeful about the activities and the language that you use to make sure that you are cultivating that ability to create change. So one exercise I love to do with my teams and my clients is this no because yes and exercise. And what we do is that it's an improv exercise that people use all the time. And it's about this yes and, where it's like you build on each other's ideas. But I like to do it where it's no because first. So we start off with, hey, here's an idea. And I want you to tell me, no, we can't do that, Matt, because it's a horrible idea and we don't have the budget for it. And then you come up with a new idea, and the next person says no and gives you a reason why, and then comes up with a new idea. And we do this one time around the room. And then after that, we do a yes and exercise where we start to say, okay, well, now let's build on each other's ideas. And with that one, it's like, okay, well, I think that we should have, a big party tonight and have a bunch of elephants there. The next person, yes, and we should have roasted peanuts freshly made. And another person goes, yes, and we should play a movie. And yes, and it keeps on going and going and going. And this yes and mentality, this yes and culture can create new ideas that's going to spur the change. You might not be able to put that whole concept into play, but it's going to be able to create the change, right? You're going to be able to elevate versus a no because culture, which is most of the time what we currently deal with in most organizations, a no because type of culture. So changing it to yes and helps you create that change that's going to improve that real problem.
And I actually love this approach, because if you come into the no because from that mindful place, you are that much more ahead of the game, in that you can understand where you might be blocking things off. I mean, you just sparked something in me where I'm looking at, I know my instant response to something is a no because, but if I did that intentionally, or if a leader and their teams did that more intentionally, they could
Yeah.
actually see, I could see where that's the innovation. And it's interesting as you describe solving the real problem, because what I do find in a lot of cases with my clients, when I'm working with them and they are later on the chain and they have solved the problem,
Mm-hmm.
the solution has become their next problem.
Yeah. Yes.
And that is really where, so I love that you're creating and you've got these areas to look at, this whole framework. Yes, you've got it down into 1, 2, 3, but even just discussing it really inspires innovation. So have you just said the third one yet?
Not yet.
Okay, let's hear it.
All right. The next one, the third, is the most important and the one that gets forgotten most often. Um, I created a concept when I was on the innovation team where we had to evolve the experience of our retail stores. And retailers were saying, please help us. We need to evolve this. It has to get better. We're having big issues in our stores. Employees are not engaged. Consumers don't really like the experience, and we're losing customers left and right. And we developed a concept of, hey, no problem, retailer. We got your back. We created an innovation, and you're going to love this new experience. And we went in and we trained all the employees on this experience. And for like 2 weeks straight, we were there training them, and they loved it. It was a great experience. You would see the lift in engagement, the lift in consumer experience, increased sales. Everything was running on all cylinders because we came in with an innovation for them. Then we left. And then guess what happens? We come back to the store, gone. They weren't doing anything at all. They were back to the old way that they were, less engagement, less customers. It was back to the way it was, like we never even were there. And I was like, what happened, guys? Like, you guys were doing so amazing with this concept. It was working. And it was too hard. It wasn't really working for us. It's not for us. Like, it wasn't a good idea. So we went back into those stores again and we said, okay, we're going to approach this differently. And this time, what we're going to do is we're just going to ask you questions, and we're going to say, hey, tell us about this experience. What are the things that you really despise? What are the things that you really love? What do you like about serving customers? What do you dislike about serving customers? What do you like about your employees? What matters to you in life? We would start asking all these deep questions to the employees. And at the end of it, we're like, okay, now you tell us, what does an ideal model look like? What should we do? And once we did that, that's when we were able to spark major change within those stores. And we started to really see increased engagement that lasted. We started to see consumer satisfaction go up. We saw increased sales. The funny thing is that the process that they designed was the same exact process that we initially trained, but this time it was theirs. So the third variable is acceptance. You have to get others to accept that that change is actually going to solve that real problem. When you put those three things together, that is when you have long-term innovation success. So it all comes down to getting that acceptance.
Yeah. And letting that fully integrate. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm right there with you. I just want to make sure I've got number one, solve real problems, solve
Yes.
the real problem.
But
Go into
identify
this
the real
space.
problem. Yeah.
Identify it and then solve the real problem. Okay, so you identify the real problem, which I'm sure you have exercises that help uncover the real problems, right? I know I do with
Absolutely.
the kind of work that I do and more one-on-one, some things are pretty apparent, but some things are hidden.
Yeah.
And so I bet there's a whole strategy with that. I would love to um, unpack that a tiny bit. But the second
Sure.
thing you said was create the change that actually improves the problem.
Yes.
And then the third is acceptance, which
Yes.
then I can see, okay, now it's integrated. And as you're describing this whole culture, when you go in there, then this actually can be implemented as opposed to, there's countless organizations out there that actually are throwing scads of money at problems and they don't have the right problem identified and
Yeah.
they are not actually creating the change that solves the right problem. And then you see implosion and you see workplace engagement go down because people
Yeah.
are confused. Then it goes
Mm-hmm.
back to the whole cycle and they're confused again. So
Yeah.
unpack then just a little bit, if you could, some insight around uncovering how to discover what the real problem is, how to identify that real problem.
Yeah, I think the first thing is to get out of your own head. That is first and foremost. A lot of times we run on a bias. I mean, it's now human nature, right? We save a lot of time by having our own opinions and biases like kind of hardwired into our subconscious. There's a great story I talk about in my book called The Thirsty Dog, and it's a company that created a bottle of water for dogs in the 90s. And the reason why he created this water was because he had a beagle, he absolutely loved this beagle, and he hated giving him tap water because it was full of minerals and chemicals, and he just didn't like it. So he wanted to have a healthier water. He's like, I wouldn't drink from a toilet. I'm not going to let my dog do that. So he created this company and he sold these water bottles, these bottled waters after testing it out with about 20,000 dogs. Everyone loved it. Crispy beef was the flavor. They had it all figured out. They shipped out pallets to all these stores across the country and grocery stores and pet stores. And then they sat on the shelf and no one purchased it. And the reason why was because dogs, they just don't have wallets. They can't make this purchase. Yes, they absolutely loved it. It was a great tasting water. Who can deny crispy beef? However, consumers were not seeing the value in it, right? There wasn't a real problem. And even though people were telling him that, hey, Mark, we don't think this is a good idea. It sounds like you're selling snake oil. And he would just defend his company. He'd defend the idea and say, well, I wouldn't drink from a toilet. So why would I let my dog do that? But he's not listening to the customers. He's only thinking about his own personal bias. So he created a company, spent millions of dollars on his own problem rather than thinking about real problems. So the first thing that you need to do when you're thinking about real problems is to get out of your own head and just come to the realization that you don't know anything. Just be a novice. And that puts you much further ahead of the game. What's really important then is to then bring people into this conversation with you earlier on. So the way that I work with my clients is that I will sit down with key stakeholders within the company and we sit down and we do ethnographic interviewing with them to learn what everyone's saying about the real problems of the company. And we start to gather insights intel from the key stakeholders. We then take that intel and then we go and research with consumers. And then we find out from the consumer's point of view, what are the issues that you're facing, and get intel from consumers. And then we go to frontline workers. If that's involved, if we have a retail store, we'll go and we'll work with employees and spend time with them to understand what are they seeing. And what we're able to do is take ethnographic research and these insights from all three parties. And it's almost like a Venn diagram that you put together. And you can find the mindful issues of alignment right in the center. And that's how you start to identify real problems. It's by just having conversations, open conversations, and removing your bias from it, and just leaning in and learning from others because they have the insights. And if you actively listen to them, they're going to gladly share that with you. And you're going to be able to hear and identify the true problem. Not only do you get that benefit, but it also helps you in variable three, acceptance, because you brought them in early enough. So now you get to repeat back to them, well, if I heard you correctly, these are the things that you're telling me are the issues. So the real problem is X. Yes, you're right. That's the real problem. And once you start seeing that head nod, you know you have an acceptance already built in because you brought them in early enough and you're understanding it from their point of view, what the real problem is. So it's easy to get acceptance when you start them in early.
Oh, that's gold, absolute gold. Oh my goodness. I can see this. The way you describe stories, by the way, is excellent because you can tell different nuances when I mean, I could actually see that experience happening and being able to cultivate communication where their input is important. And then you're able to cultivate that in the culture. I think that that is so
Mhm.
insightful and really useful for a leader to develop that as a skill. So what's your go-to book that you would say is your like maybe top book for leading and
Mhm.
staying in that leadership mindset? So, lead stronger, longer, but really so that you are applying that for yourself. Now, because you're also leading your own business and then you're also leading innovation projects within
Mhm.
major, like that hundreds of, many, many, many folks. And
Mhm.
there's a whole different aspect of leading there. I would love for you to share your own personal book that you would recommend, but then also one for our leaders there. You don't
Oh
have
my
to just use
gosh.
one in what I'm saying.
Yeah, no. So my favorite book of all times is Simon Sinek. Start with Why. That is a huge game changer for me. That was the book that absolutely just changed everything. Um, and it's something when you think about the three variables, you're starting with the why, right? You're getting right down into, what's the real problem, or why should we really do this? And well, we should really do it because it's a real problem, right? So it's kind of connected. But I think it's just so important to start with that piece of it. So that's a definite must read in my book. Um, so that would be one I would recommend to any leader that's looking to create change within their organization or looking just to be a better leader. It's an amazing book. Um, and then I'm sorry, what was the other part of that? There was
Well,
another.
just really something that's had a major impact on you, but clearly we haven't had someone say start with why for a while. So I'm glad
Mm,
you said that. It's a good reminder.
foundational, yes.
I think it is foundational, absolutely. But you had mentioned the Buddhist monk who came up, and
Mhm.
the thing is, there is there is a necessary practice of being mindful. And
Mhm.
you touched on it a little bit, but I would love to know if you have something along those lines with regards to being more mindful and some insight there or books that you would recommend as a go-to there for leading more mindfully.
Mhm. Yeah, I think as far as mindfulness is concerned, it's so important for us to have within our life. I can't think of a book or a reference there. However, I think what I would say is that I feel like we tend to overcomplicate it, right? Where it's like we think we have to have like a huge process or a framework to be able to be more mindful. Or I hear all the time, like from executives, I've tried and I can't do it. Like when I go on stage and I speak, I ask everyone in the room, like, who here meditates? And there's usually about 60 to 80% of people that don't meditate. And when I ask them why, it's because, well, it's just too complicated. I can't do it. It just doesn't work for me. My mind goes all over the place and I can't stop my thoughts from happening. I'm like, well, okay. So what makes you think that it's not working for you? Like what tells you it's not? Well, I'm scatterbrained. I have a monkey brain issue. I was like, well, there's only one time that you don't have thoughts in your head, and that's when you're dead. So it's okay. I was like, don't worry, you're going to have thoughts in your head. The fact that you're recognizing that there's thoughts is a great start. So that shows you that you actually are mindful. But I feel like we overcomplicate it and we have high expectations of what it should be doing for us. But really, it's just a matter of being present in the breath. And it's just so simple to start, but I feel like we overcomplicate it. So I think it comes down to, helping leaders just be a little bit more, um, you know, not what's the word I'm looking for here, to be just a little bit more compassionate with themselves, and that they can be mindful, they can do it, they are doing it, and to embrace it. And you don't need a book, you don't need a huge education on mindfulness practices. All you got to just do is just do it.
Yeah, and it is actually natural.
Hmm.
If you understand, you just let go. It's basically everything you just described in the last 20, 30 minutes of just letting go and stop assuming and stop putting something out there and making all those assumptions. You just let it all go and just be and just like listen, and you're here. And that's, I think that is where the true power comes for leaders and innovators. And
Yeah.
I haven't read your book yet. I've got it ordered. So uh, I'm surprised.
Awesome.
So would you recommend, and let's say you've got this great book that's come out, and probably that would be some insightful reading with regards to mindfulness and innovation.
I do think so. Yes, I'm not a good self promoter, as you see, but yes, I mean,
I
I
was
totally,
like,
I
okay.
think it's a great book for you to get the balance of the two. So in each chapter, there is a mindful tip. So it
Good.
breaks down the three variables. So the way that the book works, it's a framework, and we're going to break down all three variables, and each variable is going to have about 3 to 4 chapters on it. So when we talk about acceptance, one of the major things we're going to talk about is office politics, and that's a major factor in getting acceptance. And a lot of us have like these negative connotations about what office politics are. And you know what? A lot of people say, I'm just not going to play. I don't play office politics. Well, I'm sorry, but once you accepted that job, you're playing the game. You're sitting down at the table playing the game, whether or not you like it. So you're anteing up. So now it's time to play the cards that you were dealt. And in that chapter, we go through office politics and how you can navigate that in a better way. At the end of the chapter, we're going to do a mindfulness exercise that breaks down office politics. And what we're going to do is we're going to break down the assumptions that you have. And why do you feel like a certain person has you in their sights, or out to get you, right? And we kind of dig into, okay, why do you feel that way? What are those triggers? And we're going to go a little bit deeper and deeper until we figure out, okay, well, that's not really the issue. The issue is my own internal issues with whatever it is with my confidence. So these tips at the end of the chapters help bring it to life. So you'll get about 13 to 14 great meditations out of it,
I
as
know,
well
I'm so
as
excited. I
framework.
can't wait to get this book. This
Yes,
is
I can't
awesome.
wait.
Yeah, this is useful. And I can already think in my mind 3 people that I need to hand that to just on that. I love that. Okay. Thank you for sharing. And I think you should toot your own horn on this, because we need these concepts, and from someone who understands them, as opposed to someone who's just regurgitating. And there's a lot that I see of that, where it's pretend, but I don't see the actual tangible results. And that is the one thing that you are expert at. And just getting to know you a little bit better over the last few weeks and just understanding your principles, I'm thrilled to know you and to be able to refer you, and so grateful that you took the
Oh,
time today on your
thank you.
Friday to share with my audience on how to lead stronger, longer. So what's
Of
the
course.
best way for folks to get a hold of you? Where would you like them to reach you?
Yeah, the best place to reach me is on LinkedIn. That's where I'm most active. So please follow me on LinkedIn. I share mindful tips quite often on there, things that you can use in your business. So it's Matt Mueller Innovation on LinkedIn. And also, you can check me out on themindfulinnovator.com. Love to have you on there. And I also go into talking about my 3 Ps to a transformative culture within our organizations. You can take an assessment right there on those 3 Ps and learn very quickly what actions you need to take to start creating change within your organization. So I would love for everyone to just go to themindfulinnovator.com and check that assessment out.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. Make it a great week, everyone. Lead stronger, longer.
Oh, thank you.